I'm currently the chairperson and project lead at Green Initiative Kakuma. Green Initiative Kakuma is a community-based organization which is based in the Kakuma refugee camp. Yes, and we mostly serve the refugee community and the host community by promoting climate change adaptation practices. We also do climate education through our raising awareness, and we're looking forward to have climate literacy classes in a climate academy. So when I was told to prepare a presentation, I thought of coming up with these three themes: climate change awareness, climate change literacy, and but it's okay.
Your audio is much better now.
Okay, fine. Let me proceed.
Okay.
So, climate change literacy. There's a lot that is going on in the world today that needs us to come together and talk about climate change. But a good percentage of the population in Kenya, in Africa, and in the global south do not really understand what climate change is. Mostly because it has been left for those who have got an advanced level of education. But most people, especially those whose education levels are not advanced, they really do not understand what climate change is, its impacts, and its causes. That is why I decided for this particular topic. And because my organization is working towards tackling these three main issues, apart from other things that we have been doing for the last about 14 months. So you can move to the next slide so that we define what climate change literacy is. Now, what is climate change literacy? From the word literature, from the word literacy, we have heard of numerical literacy and digital literacy, especially in young children or in young people. But when you talk of climate literacy, it simply means that there is this ability to understand the essential principles of the Earth's climate systems, to know how to assess scientifically credible information about climate, to communicate climate change in a meaningful way that is clear, and be able to make informed and responsible decisions regarding climate actions. So most of the people, especially in rural parts or in underserved and underprivileged communities in the global south, Kenya being one of them, do not really have this particular knowledge, do not know how to communicate. And these are risks because they can be misinformed, they can be disinformed, they can be misguided because they don't know what climate change is. They just hear maybe in the media, and people who might be having this weaponized knowledge to go against climate change adaptation and mitigation, the climate deniers, those who want to delay the actions towards climate change adaptation and mitigation, can find a way of getting into the vulnerabilities of this lack of knowledge, which essentially means that these people are not climate literate, they are climate illiterate. So this climate illiteracy is a very big issue. And that is why my organization is trying to find a way of bringing in or bridging the gap between knowing and not knowing. So we're trying to increase the level of climate literacy. Though we have not scaled to have a climate academy, we have just been raising awareness by conducting workshops For the last 4 months, concerning the workshops of educating youths between 18 to 35 years, we have managed to conduct 3 days workshops in 2 sessions. Those are 6 days, and we have managed to train 78 refugees within that age bracket and 24 host community youths, bringing a total of 102 youths who have been trained in the last 5 months, so that they can understand what climate is, what it is, how it is caused, and everything related to it. So that is one area where we must really be careful with, because people take advantage of people who are climate illiterate. People take advantage so much. People take advantage. Yeah, so that is basically about climate change literacy. We need to boost the levels of climate literacy in each person, from a child to a youth to an adult, to the old, every person should be involved. Every person should have at least something to know or to communicate about climate change. Okay, you can move to the next slide. So when you talk about climate change, literacy, we can have formal learning where we have maybe like a school, yes, like an academy where people come, yeah, we learn, we teach, people write, people do exams about climate change, and that is the vision, and that is one of the things that my organization is really seeking to achieve by gathering resources and by involving all stakeholders. The other way where people can be climate literate is through informal learning, where those who know, those who have the knowledge about climate change can share with others, maybe through discussions, even at home, even in the buses, in the trains, in the aeroplanes, where there is no structured way of learning. And I believe that for us to achieve informal learning of climate change and boosting or improving the levels of climate literacy, we must have the formal learning first, so that we have a large number of youths, a large number of young people, a large number of adults who have undergone the formal learning of climate change. And now it is easy for them to spread it through the informal learning. And that is what my organization really, really wants to achieve, especially in Kakuma refugee camp. So we urge that all youths, adults, children, those with the knowledge should inspire others, should share with others through informal learnings. Anywhere, anytime, climate change must be shared. The knowledge must be spread so that we avoid being misguided, so that we avoid being misinformed. Yes. Yes, next slide, please. Now, when you talk about the principles of climate literacy, there's some of the basic things that guide maybe this approach, where people should know about climate change. And one of them is, there are 7, according to the North America Association of Environmentalists. And there's also a document that is attached to this particular presentation through a link, which will be shared and can help people to understand. That people should understand that the sun is the source of energy for the Earth's climate system. Number 2, people should know that climate is regulated by complex interactions among components of the Earth system. Number 3, that life on Earth depends on, is shaped by, and affects climate, so that we don't be oblivious and say, no, climate is not there. No, climate affects everything. Climate is part and parcel of us. We also know that climate varies over space and time through both natural and man-made processes. So when we bring these particular concepts as guiding principles, we are going to have it easier for us to ensure that people that we are impacting at least have the knowledge about this climate, and those are the guiding principles. Next slide, so that we look at other principles of climate literacy that guide us. Hello.
We're still here.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you proceed? My screen is not showing anything.
Oh, I think Tracy was.
Or I can proceed without the sharing of the screen.
She'll be back. There we go.
Yeah, you can move to the next slide. Yes, understanding of climate system is improved through observation, theoretical studies, and modeling. That when we'll be delivering this structured content about climate change, should be understood that there is scientific element of it through observation, studies, and creating of models. There is a SLAN model that has been made by En-ROAD's climate ambassadors. I think those who have interacted with the En-ROAD climate ambassadors, there is a model of climate. It has so many elements in it. And through that also, people will be able to predict and know what climate is, what will happen if we decrease the number of forests, what will happen if we produce more solar panels, but what will happen to the extractive industries, what will happen if we have more cows on earth, with so many things being explained in that particular model that predicts every situation that is possible within the next 100 years of Earth. In climate literacy, another principle that should govern understanding of climate knowledge is that human activities are impacting the climate system. And this is where we come in and say, no, let us not cut down trees without replacing them. Let us not just base our source of energy from the fossil fuels. We should embark on the solar, we should embark on the wind, and maybe the form of hydrogen that is now being worked on and that is maybe going to get traction the next few years. So when people understand this, it will bring a sense of responsibility unto all of us. And it is true that climate change will have consequences for the Earth system and human lives. There is no way that climate change will just exist and we'll be at peace with it. We have seen hurricanes. Recently in Kenya, we experienced floods. People lost lives. Properties worth millions of dollars were destroyed. So with this understanding, even a child who is 6 years will know that when I cut down a tree, I'll be doing this. When we have too many vehicles on the road using diesel and polluting the air, we are going to have a lot of weather extremes that will impact our lives. So these are some of the things that we have to check on. And with the 7 principles, then delivering the climate knowledge is easier. And now we dig deeper. For those with advanced education who can understand scientific concepts, we go deeper and explain the climate physical science. For those who are not so much advanced in their education, who will find difficulties in grasping detailed scientific concepts, it will be easy for them to be given the superficial knowledge, like when you cut down trees, this will happen. solar energy is good for us, wind energy is good for us, and such like things, so that we protect our environment and we combat this climate change. Yeah, I think I've attached a link to a document that explains in details those 7 guiding principles of climate literacy, which are very essential to our spreading of climate change knowledge. Thank you. Next slide, please. Yeah, gender is an issue here. According to a research that was conducted in 2021 by an organization called Climate Center for Research Studies, we have a gap of 12.8% between men and women. Men are more climate literate than women. So when we are combating this climate change, we should know that women bear much when it comes to the consequences of climate change. Yet, they're the ones who are more illiterate than men. So we need to ensure that we have not left women behind. We have to ensure that all women have been empowered, either through being educated or being supported in their climate change initiatives. In my organization, we have impacted 34 smallholder farmers in a village called Nakoyo in Kakuma. These women have farming groups. So we educate them on how to adopt drought-resilient seeds of vegetables like the cowpeas, the amaranth, like the giant nightshade, like the spider plant, for the drought-resilient species or varieties. And through that, it has helped them because they used to grow or farm vegetables that could not be sustainable in that particular environment. Kakuma experiences very little amount of rainfall per year, and high temperatures are there. You can Google that, you can research on that. It is hot. So if they have access to water through the community boreholes and the drip irrigation, we then come and teach them that you can do this, you can have these particular seeds for you. You can employ more methods of utilizing water economically by using maybe drip irrigation and other forms of irrigation, like the use of used bottles of water to just drip water maybe for a particular plant for a given period of time. Actually, women are more likely to accept climate change as a reality than men, despite the fact that they are the ones who are more illiterate than men compared to in regards to the climate change issue. They are more likely to adopt and to accept what they are being told, especially when it is true. And that is why my organization really focuses on that we don't leave women behind. In as much as some of them will not understand the complexities, yeah, it's fine. But we can support them in the adaptation practices, teaching them on how to conserve water, teaching them on how to use drought-resilient seedlings, teaching them on how to grow drought-resilient trees along the edges of their farms. Yes. So women should not be left behind. Next slide, please. So that's why a climate academy for young people is a necessity for me, especially in Kakuma refugee camp and across the world. It is very difficult for some of us, especially in African countries, to really introduce climate change as a subject on its own into the school curriculum or into the curriculum of the education systems, which are rigid. It's not easy to adjust and recommend, though we are trying. Some organizations have been trying to push that, but it's not easy. So the only way, apart from maybe having climate clubs in schools, I believe that having a climate academy, especially in a vulnerable context, especially in a refugee camp, is very essential, where learners will be taught, especially the youths, because they can still grasp concepts easily compared to the older generation about this science, about this adaptation, about this mitigation, about this climate justice, about this climate mitigation, about climate finance. They can grasp this concept. That is why a climate academy is a necessity for me. Yes, we know that having old men and women, especially in places where they're disadvantaged education-wise and economically, it's very hard for them to come and get trained in a place unless we take the education to them. And that is why I think we can have these particular learning hubs where we have knowledge being dispensed in the local language, in the vernacular language of these particular people, so that they can understand in those learning hubs where they gather maybe for 1 hour, and then we have one of them who is a young person who understands their language. Then he or she communicates to them, teaches them the simple things about climate. Being told, don't overgraze your cows, especially for the pastoralists, in one particular land for a long time. No, you will be destroying the environment. You should graze responsibly. You should not be cutting down trees. You should be adopting the use of solar energy. You see, so those learning hubs are very important, but they should be having a focused approach, especially with the language use, because people in rural areas, people who do not have advanced level of education, it's hard for them to get some concepts. So they must be explained to in the best terms possible. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, actually, climate change awareness is not really far from climate change literacy, but now here we are referring to the combined efforts that are aimed at informing individuals, societies, communities about the issues of climate change, with an aim of educating them, yes, raising concern and encouraging action. We cannot encourage action without raising awareness. We cannot raise concern if you just have the knowledge without sharing it. And how does this happen? Next slide, please. Of course, we know social media, print media, mass media, all of these particular strategies or forms are aware to us. Even some of this information we get in in X, Facebook, Instagram, they really communicate a lot. If there is an issue about destruction of the Congo forest, the largest tropical forest in Africa, and we refer it towards the lungs of Africa. If we do not have information about what is going on there, if the Congolese cannot tell us, you guys, our forest is at risk because we are having oil explorers, they want to come and explore oil here, they want to cut down the trees. We cannot know that if you are not in Congo, but because of social media, people post, we learn from that. It raises a concern. So very important to raise awareness. We can also promote activism, like what I've been seeing with the Greenpeace Africa, of which I'm an online volunteer. They tell us we are having a petition against the government of Senegal because they have attracted investors to explore oil in an indigenous community where people are having their lives, they're having their culture, maybe in a given forest or in a given ecosystem. And people sign for those petitions. The same to what lawyers do. When we involve the community, when we involve organizations, even the banks, even the hospitals, you tell them, no, you are offering us these banking services, but we also need you to make sure that we also need you to raise awareness about climate change. So in your policies, please make sure that every customer who comes to bank with you has known that he should do this for the sake of the climate. Don't encourage the use of renewable energy, or for them, they can do anything. They can do anything to ensure that at least they're part of this particular journey or this particular exercise. Next slide, please. Indigenous knowledge. Yes. People are saying, oh, we have knowledge, but we have knowledge, yes, which has been acquired. Some of this scientific knowledge that we have originated from people who are not educated like us. Some of the methods of predicting weather, like observing the behavior of birds and plants, the behavior of animals, the sounds, stays with people on this earth. We have a lot of indigenous communities, all the way from Congo forest to Amazon to South Asia. We have indigenous communities. So when we talk of indigenous knowledge, what do we really mean? That it is a form of institutionalized local information which has been built upon and passed on from one generation to the other by word of mouth and other socialization processes. Or a body of observations, either oral and written knowledge, innovations, beliefs, and practices that promote sustainability and the responsible stewardship of cultural and natural resources through relationships between humans and their landscapes. We cannot afford to ignore this, because some of the communities who bear this indigenous knowledge play a very important part in conserving the ecosystem and in reducing the negative impacts of climate. And that is why even in the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, there is always an aspect of the indigenous knowledge or the indigenous communities' knowledge in regards to adaptation and mitigation of climate change. This knowledge should be passed on from one generation to the other. And those who are at the decision-making level should be tapping into this knowledge and ensuring that the rights of these people who are in these indigenous contexts, their rights are well reserved, their cultural sites are not destroyed, and what they believe in should just remain, because these people play a very important role. In fact, some of our forests, some of our ecosystems could have been destroyed long time ago if it is not for the indigenous people. So to some extent, they might not be having more education or a high level of education than some of us, but they conserve the environment more than us. That's something that we have really to take in seriously, not for granted. So with climate, the level of education, especially the formal education, does not really matter, but the will really matters. Next slide, please. Yeah, those are the roles of indigenous knowledge. Recognizing and incorporating indigenous knowledge into climate policies and initiatives, the governments, the international bodies for making decisions, the IPCC, the UNFCCC, states, non-state actors, they can really buy a lot from this indigenous knowledge across the world, anywhere. And it does not really mean that they must be in forests. No. There can be people who are just in a rural community where there's no forest, maybe it's a desert, but they really understand the environment, because they have been told that this happens when you see these birds coming, there's rain coming after that. When you see these particular animals behaving in this particular manner, rain is almost coming to actualize. And this knowledge will be used even in developing early warning systems. So indigenous knowledge and practices such as agroforestry, rotational grazing, traditional land use management really contributes to carbon sequestration and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It is true that these people really do well with these particular practices. So we should always follow their example. And the communal thing that is explained here is that they emphasize mostly on community-based approaches. That is one thing that really stands out for them. They are cooperative. So if all of us could behave like what some of these people do, especially in the indigenous communities which are identified globally, I think climate change will be combated in a very appropriate manner. Combined efforts, collective responsibility. You take care of where you are because you know if you don't take care of that place, then you will not eat, then you will not have clean air. Next slide, please. Of course, they are the custodians of biodiversity-rich lands. Yeah. Talk of all the best ecosystems in this world. The indigenous communities have really contributed a lot because of their indigenous knowledge in conserving these ecosystems. A thumbs up for them. Some of these indigenous knowledge are adaptive strategies that have been developed over generations to cope with environmental variability and changes like the ones that you're experiencing now. That is why you'll find them, they never lack food, especially those people who really know what it means to protect or conserve their ecosystems. So this indigenous knowledge, if really well tapped, will inform some of the decisions that are made at higher levels. They also possess deep traditional knowledge about their local ecosystems, which can help to make informed decisions, especially in policy making, especially in coming up with adaptation plans. It's really nice because they really understand their environment. They've been there for years. Their forefathers and mothers told them. They really know what it is. They really feel it. They even know which year they lacked rainfall, which year there was drought, and what they did not to experience that again. So it is very good that we should not neglect this indigenous knowledge. And one of a strategy that my organization is looking towards to is, apart from having the climate academy and the learning hubs, we should have a way where the learning hubs, we invite the older generations of men and women who bear some of these particular facts concerning their local environments to share with us. And through that, we can be able to advise those at higher higher bodies of decision making. Next slide, please. Now, as I conclude, there are two things that I really want to emphasize on. Climate change cannot be dealt with, cannot be approached without knowledge. Knowledge cannot be approached without a strategy. And strategy cannot be done or actualized without having structures. And that is why I really insist that we, as young people, we as climate activists, we as people of influence, we should really have climate academies for the youths. Apart from the normal school learning. And we should also have learning hubs where people who have indigenous knowledge, people who do not have advanced levels of education, can really come and contribute, learn, and share their experiences. Thank you so much. That is my presentation. That's my email.